So what we're going to do today is we're going to tag team this presentation, which makes perfect sense because we're talking about some combined technologies, and we've got people from both sides here that can make sure you get the very straight story on what's going on. And so what I will do is I will kind of jump into an introduction of what we're going to talk about today. So unified communications is always first and foremost in our hearts and minds. It's really where the new and interesting things are happening in this market for us. And it's interesting from our point of view. While we started as a voicemail product years and years ago, and we still sell voicemail replacement systems, and we're very, very good at that, recognized as the industry leader. And for years and years, we've sold fax systems and been recognized that with the product that we sell for that. And both of those applications, they keep right on coming to us in terms of something people have to have, but they change. So we talk a lot about what's changed, and that's what we're going to do today. In particular, we're going to talk about the fax solution that's part of our product. Now, if you look at kind of our history, since the beginning, we've been in voicemail and call processing. That's what we were founded to do in terms of from a product point of view. Very early on, we realized that as part of the call processing piece, some automation of the fax process was just a fantastic thing for customers in terms of lowering costs and simplifying things and increasing productivity. And then over the years, we kept adding. So we've done the unified messaging and the custom business process solutions, speech rec, personal assistant, all of that. But along the way, what's been a fairly constant piece for us is the fax piece. Now, in the very earliest days, we actually built our own fax application, and it was very similar to what you'd see as a telephony fax solution today. Like if you have an older Octel system that receives faxes into the mailbox, we had that. It's very limited. We thought it was really, really good until we actually had a chance to combine our company and, at the time, the RightFax company. The two companies merged, so we had access to the RightFax product, and that gave us a real eye-opener in terms of what fax could do, the kind of things it could do, and how it fit in an enterprise. So for many, many years, we were the same company, and as part of the Call Express solution, we would always propose the RightFax server. And the RightFax business actually grew exponentially compared to the voice business, and 10 years ago, we split the company apart. And AVST went on with the Call Express product, and at the time, Capteris went on with the RightFax product. Now, since then, Capteris has been purchased by OpenText, a company that has a long history of looking at very, very high productivity solutions and kind of rolling them into their mix. But even though it's a separate company, we maintained an agreement with them, and we can still sell the RightFax product as part of the Call Express solution. And it is something we've never gotten away from. We've maintained that close relationship between the two companies. We still know all the same people, and although we're separate companies, we definitely are in the business of making sure our dealers and our customers know about the benefits you can get from a RightFax server. Far from decreasing, those benefits have increased over the years. Just like our product, the RightFax product has grown. It's become just such a feature-rich product that in a webinar like this, we bring the experts on board to make sure you get the straight story. So whether you're just looking at unified messaging from the fax piece, in which case it integrates with the Call Express, and you can use our admin client to maintain it. I mean, it's a very tightly integrated solution. If you're going a little further and you want a fax library out of our menus or any of that, custom IVR applications can use the RightFax toolkit. All of that is there and available. But beyond that, there's a whole world of document management solutions that RightFax plays in, and their story is very similar to ours. They have the modular approach, they have all the common solutions available, and they have the toolkits available to take the business process piece further as well. So we're a very good fit in terms of products. Now, Greg, do you want to take over here and talk about this piece, or you want me to?
Absolutely. I can get in here if you'd like, Neil.
Okay, I'm turning it over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Neil. This is Greg Sutter with OpenText. I'm going to walk through a little bit of some background about RightFax in terms of the foundation of the product, of what features and functions and what makes it a strong fax server product out in the market, and then we'll dive into the fax over IP component, and I talk a little bit about high availability and features and functions and options there, and that'll be my piece today. So this slide here, really, besides pointing out the fact that Davidson Consulting, Frost & Sullivan, we've long been recognized as the fax server and market leader in this industry. We're now the fax industry leader in fax over IP solutions. But what I really take away from this information is that you've got a long-standing product in the market, RightFax, with a very successful history, with a lot of organizations, especially at the enterprise level. And you've got a company behind us now, OpenText, that is very much committed to development of the product, support of the product, maintenance of the product, and working with our account base. So really a great product to move forward with, and a very strong presence out in the market. And one of the things over the years that's made RightFax a very important product in the market and a very strong product in the market, and kind of differentiates us from our competition, are our integrations. So as you look through the slide, you're going to see a number of areas. I'll touch upon a few. But our strength has been maintaining partnerships and strategic alliances with other vendor partners in applications where fax can be sent from, fax can be received to, and a number of these are pointed out here. So for instance, SAP and Oracle backend applications around ERP, finance applications, etc. Email integrations. We're going to take a look at some of this in a minute. I want to point out here multifunction devices. We have a long history here of integrating with folks like Ricoh, HP, Xerox. This has been a very important market out there for folks that want to continue to fax hard copy paper. And this enables that multifunction device, print, scan, fax device to print to the RightFax server. So now we have a hardware client for faxing hard copy paper. We integrate with a variety of vertical applications, especially in healthcare and finance today. So if you're in a specific industry and you have a specific application that's kind of running the back-end operation of your business, we probably can fax enable it, or already do fax from it today. And then what we're going to talk a bit more about here today, of course, is unified communications and our ability to do fax over IP and integrate into the unified communications networks and IP networks. So RightFax does offer a number of client options. So if you're familiar with RightFax or have RightFax, you'll be familiar with these. If not, we've got a historical and strong integration with email vendors like IBM with Lotus Notes, of course Microsoft Exchange. We also do offer an SMTP or POP3 gateway, which includes now a secure SMTP integration. So if you wanted to integrate to your hosted email or hosted applications, we can do that as well. So Office 365, Google Apps, we also support those types of integrations for fax delivery. From a desktop client perspective, we do provide our own client called the Fax Util. We do provide a print driver, so you can print to fax from an open document. The Fax Util client is very much like an email client, an application that runs at your desktop and allows you to send and receive faxes as an individual from your desktop very securely and privately. We do have some admin tools. The Enterprise Fax Manager is the name of our administrative functionality, and we offer, from a web or thin client perspective, both the ability to do that administrative functionality from the Enterprise Fax Manager Web Edition, as well as a web access client. It's basically mimics our Fax Util thick client from a thin client perspective using browsers, and the browsers that we support currently have broadened out over the last couple of years, and now we support everything from Internet Explorer through Firefox, Chrome, Safari, and others. Next. So another strength of RightFax, again, this goes along with the discussion around fax enabling and integration. The ability to fax enable applications on the back end has long been a strength of RightFax, and really where some of our highest volume fax environments exist today. So as you can see here, there's a number of input methods we support. We actually have a module called the integration module, which provides different integration tools to integrate to these applications and fax out of these host applications a variety of document types. So whether these are invoices from ERP applications or healthcare patient information from EHR type applications, etc., you'll find that RightFax probably can support the requirement to fax enable a backend application and probably a variety of options available to you. But again, folks like SAP, Oracle, we've long had histories of testing and partnership and alliance with those types of applications. But again, we can pretty much fax enable any application in the backend. I want to point out here, and this will be a theme as we go forward for fax over IP, that WriteFax can be virtualized. Some of you, and again, if you have WriteFax today, this may be a already understood use of the product. So we support VMware, Hyper-V. We've done some testing over the years. We use VMware internally, actually, to do our own internal testing of WriteFax. But this is a great use of the product. And one of the ways, this is kind of a lead-in slide for our fax over IP discussion, in the sense that the only way you could virtualize a fax server is to move away from traditional fax hardware, meaning fax boards, fax cards. And this is one of the advantages of doing that, is that you will be able to virtualize WriteFax. So, getting into WriteFax and FoIP, really our primary discussion here today. Put straightforward, what fax over IP is, of course, is the ability to packetize that T30 fax protocol, that traditional and still popular and supported standard today. T38 is packetizing that T30 fax information so that we can support fax over IP networks, both send and receive. Today, the standard out there is becoming SIP as a protocol. We do support H323 as a protocol as well. And as you can see over here, I've put up a number of vendors or partnerships or alliances here that we do testing with. We document this testing. We do this on a yearly basis to try to keep our most current releases of WriteFax current with the most current releases of our unified communications partners. So their IP PBXs primarily are what we're testing against. There's two ways that we can do this. We can do this as a direct integration from WriteFax to, let's use Cisco as an example here, a Cisco Unified Communications Manager. We can do that directly as an IP SIP integration. However, if you don't have an IP network, it doesn't preclude you from getting to a fax over IP scenario and being able to virtualize your fax server. We have something, and you can see it down there listed, a fax gateway. And what that fax gateway does is it's a standalone piece of equipment that allows us to take in a TDM call, could be analog, could be T1 or PRI, and convert that to a T38 SIP transmission on the other end, thereby allowing WriteFax to become, again, a fax over IP enabled fax server, which is purely software driven, no fax cards, again, required, no hardware servers, no PCI, E or PCI X slots required. So again, you could still virtualize the fax server by putting in a fax gateway to integrate to your TDM environment. So again, we have two methods here of integration. One is a direct integration IP, and one is using the fax gateway to convert to fax over IP. So assuming you have a voice over IP network or environment, the general rule of thumb has always been that if you have a successful voice over IP environment, you should be able to successfully transmit fax over IP. Really, we just piggyback on the top of that voice over IP network. That's how fax over IP typically deploys. It's not the only way, but it's traditionally how we've done it. T38 fax traffic, we generally use the same QoS prioritization policies as voice over IP. This ensures successful transmissions and error-free transmissions as well. Excuse me one second here. So we want to just be aware of a few things here in a voice over IP with fax over IP overlay. So we want to avoid things like packet loss, jitter, and delay. So these are a few things when you're building out your quality of service or QoS policies to be aware of. And we can talk more about that in depth as needed. Next. So some of the benefits of moving to a fax over IP environment include support for the T38 real-time fax standard. So T38 has become the fax standard of today for fax over IP. One of the primary benefits there is that T38 supports redundancy in the sending of packets. So that's important just to make sure that the transmissions are successful on a regular basis, so that if we do lose any packets along the way, we're not going to lose that fax, drop that fax call, lose pages, lose packets. This also moves along and supports companies for an all-IP framework, maximizing the use of your voice over IP network. So we can move away from things like hardware, we move away from things like fax boards, move away from hardware servers, etc. So we don't have to have what really amounts to costly hardware servers, CPU-type machines, again with the PCI slot requirement that we've had in the past with fax boards and fax cards. And again, I mentioned we encapsulate the T30 protocol, so this is really a reliable fax transmission today. I know there have been, years ago there were quite a few questions about T38 and fax over IP and its reliability, but today it's a pretty well-known technology and pretty well understood in how to make this successful transmission over your IP network. Some additional benefits, and you'll notice here there's some themes that are coming along through the benefits section here. There's going to be cost reductions at moving to a fax over IP environment, including telephony, support, maintenance, administration. We talked a little bit about hardware savings. There's also moving away from analog phone lines, moving away from things like ATAs, analog telephony adapters. There's cost savings here in moving to a pure software-driven fax over IP solution. There's going to be better managed call performance and cost utilization through your IP PBXs and voice gateways and IP network. So we have the ability to do things like least cost routing. We can do things like load balancing. We have ways to maximize the use of your network in a device IP environment with IP gateways that we did not have traditionally in the past without setting up multiple endpoints for the fax server. So again, making good use of that IP environment. We talked a bit about virtualization. Obviously, people are mostly aware of the savings there, reducing our hardware footprint, allowing for a centralized model of equipment and application servers and data centers. And one other thing I wanted to point out, we talked about the multifunction integration and fax capabilities there, and integrating those hardware platforms. Those multifunction device units, they include the option to fax. But to do that, you generally have to hook up analog phone lines and make use of their fax kits, which have associated costs. By integrating these multifunction devices to RightFax, you cut down on the need for those analog integrations for more of an active passive environment. You'll also see in this slide these dock transport layers. Think of these as your telephony integration layers. So we have the ability to separate our telephony integration layers from our actual fax server RightFax application layers. And what that allows us to do is similarly as when an application layer goes out, there's other application layers, RightFax servers up and running. The dock transports, we can lose a dock transport and still have these telephony layers running and have the ability to send and receive faxes through the telephony environment. So we can mix and match how these dock transports and fax application servers can speak to one another. So we can greater redundancy in this collective that's very unique to RightFax. And lastly, from a failover perspective, we have fax over IP failover. And again, this is the benefit of having a voice over IP network, voice over IP gateways that are both local or centralized to your central office, but also remote and at your remote offices. RightFax has the ability to send out of a primary gateway a fax, so that we want to transmit a fax to our customer, etc. If that gateway fails or has a failure, we cannot fax out for some reason. RightFax can understand that, recognize that failure. We have the ability through our dialing rules to route to another fax gateway that may be available out there on the IP network. So this is a huge benefit and something, again, we did not have when we did not have the ability to maximize the use of IP networks and IP gateways. So we have redundant call route paths, as you see here on this slide. So another huge benefit of moving to fax over IP with RightFax. So we improve your system's uptime and reliability. And again, a lot of fax today is driving organizations' businesses, and we recognize the importance here of how we integrate over your IP network and maximize that uptime and reliability.
One of the advantages of the combined expertise of having both OpenText and AVST in this UC solution is the fact you're dealing with experts with a long history on both sides. And that comes clearly through. And when you think of the themes that Greg talked about in terms of how important interoperability and integration is, and virtualization and reliability, those are the exact themes for all of the solutions in UC. So when we kind of look at how we fit this into our product mix, we talk about UC voice as the core component. We're out there every day replacing older legacy systems, some of which have fax, none of which have anywhere near the level of functionality that are in the RightFax product. And that's the early discussion where this fax will come up. All the people that deal with our product are very comfortable in kind of ferreting out the advantages that a customer can get from moving to fax. And that includes if we go into a customer that has an existing RightFax infrastructure, we're also very likely to talk about, are they looking at taking that older legacy infrastructure into virtualization and fax over IP? Because the advantages Greg pointed out, those can be part of that movement. Our next layers tend to move up the chain, and we talk about our Atom product for our other UC communications. And all of those are fax aware as well. Certainly from a unified messaging point of view, from our personal assistant clients, from our mobile clients, fax is always a key component because those people who are using it, the mobile people, have just as much need to get timely access to those messages. So whatever device they have. And then lastly, our UC Connect business process, where we look at custom solutions that we deliver to an end user, an enterprise. Fax becomes a part of that as well. And the fact that the RightFax tools are very similar to our tools in terms of the toolkits they use make it very easy for us to deploy full UC suites that include anything that's needed in the way of that document management piece. So if we look at kind of the typical customers, and this is not only true for us, but this is certainly true for OpenText as well. There's certainly certain verticals that use a lot. We're very big in the healthcare business, and there's certainly a lot of fax activity in the healthcare market. And I doubt we have a healthcare customer where RightFax isn't on site already. Higher ed's another big piece, and once again, a good amount of that. And then the enterprise piece, that's kind of the catch-all category there. Enterprises have been deploying network-based fax for a long time, but still, every year we come up with major opportunities where we're talking to a prospective customer to increase the value of our solution by leveraging the fax solution. And it may be their first fax server. It may be looking at moving them from their traditional infrastructure to a fax over IP infrastructure. It may be looking at custom solutions that can only be delivered by something in the nature of what RightFax delivers. It is definitely a key piece of that unified communications market. So now I think what we'll do is we'll see if there's any questions from the audience out there.
Great. We do have questions. And Greg, you can go ahead and pipe in as well with these questions.
Absolutely.
So the first one is, how do you facilitate fax delivery to an email box rather than a fax machine?
So there's a couple of answers depending on what mix of products you have. Greg, I'm going to let you go ahead and handle that one because the gateway piece is the logical answer.
Sure. So, email integration, I assume we're talking inbound, we're talking fax machine versus the email. Inbound fax delivery or routing is traditionally based on DID or DNIS routing. And so a user will be assigned a fax number within the RightFax system, and within that user profile, we will assign the preferred routing method. So if it's email, then we will route the fax to the email recipient based on their email address over the email server, which will then deposit into that recipient's email client. As opposed to a fax machine, which again was DID based in the beginning, say there wasn't a fax server in place, it would just print out to that fax server as a direct inbound call off of that analog phone line. But today we have the option of using more sophisticated routing off of PBXs and IP environments such as this.
Okay. The next question is one I can answer, and they're asking if the slides will be available. And yes, the slides from this presentation will be available to you, and we'll go ahead and email those to you once the webinar is over. If we have POTS lines currently, what are the advantages of going with a fax server with fax over IP? Is there any short-term or long-term savings?
So the benefit of moving away is to consolidate and make use of your voice over IP environment today, or conversely, using the fax gateway to get to the same thing. So we typically would want to take a look at your voice infrastructure, your calls inbound, and how we might be able to run your fax over the very same network, the very same phone lines. So if you've got separate analog lines, then of course we're going to remove those from play. Now, if you're talking about running analog lines off of an existing environment where maybe your T1 or PRIs are supporting your inbound calls, Then we kind of look at a secondary layer, which is, well, if you've got simply an analog connection to a fax server today, you've probably got your fax server set up on a hardware server with fax cards, analog fax cards. So if we move that to a fax gateway and virtualize WriteFax, now you've got a benefit there that may not be strictly telephony-based, but it can be hardware server CPU-based.
Okay, next question is, what version of AVST do you have to take advantage of the WriteFax component?
It's one of those things where there's no simple answer to that. We have integrated with WriteFax since we first went to a Windows-based server, which was somewhere around 15 years ago. Now, that being said, if you're buying a WriteFax server today and you're buying the newest version, we probably will, and let's say you have a 5 or a 10-year-old version of the CX product, we probably will not have tested the very newest version with those older software releases. It might well still work, and we can have those conversations. But certainly anything that you buy today works with the very current versions. And any question of this version of WriteFax with this version of Call Express is something we have to take on a one-at-a-time basis. There's been very few changes in the gateways between the two. And in many cases, when we actually deliver both the products, the WriteFax product and the CX product, the integration with WriteFax remains on the network and through the email and doesn't necessarily come through the CX product. It's just going to depend on what your options are. So we pretty much have to talk to people on a one-on-one basis in terms of what you have today and what that would mean in terms of adding the fax piece.
Okay. Next question. I have a Call Express system with AVST Fax Gateway. What specifically does the CXE Fax Gateway do?
So the telephony gateway is a software module that combines some of the functionality of the CX or the Call Express server and the WriteFax server. And it does a couple of things. And one of the things it does is it lets you maintain your user's fax programming from within the CX client. So when I open up a subscriber mailbox, there's now a tab that says WriteFax. And when I open that up, there's all the WriteFax settings that Greg was referring to in terms of how that product works for that user. Secondly, if I want to do things like share an incoming DID number for both voice and fax, I can bring that call into the Call Express and I would detect the fax tone, and that gateway then facilitates the transferring of that call over to an available channel on the WriteFax server. And those are the two primary purposes for it.
Okay. Next question. Does WriteFax meet HIPAA requirements?
Oh, Greg, that one's yours.
Yeah, I can answer that. So WriteFax aids organizations in becoming HIPAA compliant. So as folks in healthcare are aware, patient information and privacy, protection of that information is paramount. One of the key drivers around HIPAA requirements is security and privacy. So I can give you an example of fax machines that sit out open and available for folks to walk by and maybe pick up something that was faxed in that might have private information included. If you implement a fax server like WriteFax, everything becomes digital, stays on the network, is delivered to an individual's desktop privately, or could be a network folder, etc., where login and individual login, company login requirements may apply so that information is not so easily accessible. So that's one of the ways in which we help HIPAA compliancy. There are others. We would want to talk about your specific requirements around what you're trying to do to send and receive fax, and we would build it out accordingly. But by and large, the ability to monitor, track, make this a much more private and secure environment is paramount around how we get to HIPAA compliancy with WriteFax. Great.
Okay, next question. If you do not have a fax media gateway, what would be the hardware options that you would have to have? Yeah, without a fax media gateway, what are other hardware options in place of the gateway?
There's voice media gateways, of course, that you're using for voice, which can be used for fax. Then I spoke about a fax gateway, which is something we provide and AVST provides to you, which can intercept TDM calls and convert them to fax over IP traffic. Beyond those two options, there is still the traditional, if you recall, the old Brook Trout fax board technology is still in existence today, still supported by WriteFax. fax and still used in many right fax environments. So really, I look at it as there's three options in there. There's traditional fax cards like whip-trout fax boards. There's our fax gateway, and then there's voice media gateways. And voice media gateways, if they're IP gateways, can talk directly to right fax via that T38 protocol, generally via SIP, and there wouldn't be a need for a fax gateway in the middle.
I think one of the things when people are first starting to evaluate fax over IP, they need to understand fax over IP is a within the enterprise technology, because we can't assume that the people we're sending our faxes to are IP compatible. These transmissions always get converted somewhere back into the standard fax protocols to go across the network. So until the kind of fax over IP comes so widespread that we can start talking about not doing that middle leg, there's always a piece of hardware required to make a fax call and insert the fax tones and do that type of technology. So if you weren't going to use the right fax standalone gateway and you didn't have the existing gateways, like Greg says, then it would come down to being cards. And remember, once it goes to cards, then the benefits of virtualization go away. So if you think of the fax gateway that RightFax provides as replacing cards as kind of the starting point, and then if you have your own gateways, you don't need that. But that's kind of the basic solution would be the virtualized RightFax server talking to the RightFax gateway.
Okay, great. The next question is, what is the failover option if you go fax over IP with no analog? If network fails, in most cases, the analog would indeed need to be used.
If your IP environment failed, and you're asking about high availability, and then, okay, so the scenario there is potentially re-engaging analog lines as a backup. Well, if you look back at that redundancy slide, you have the ability to integrate in multiple telephony layers. So you could have more than, it's not a single telephony input into our, what we call doc transports, which get to our application layers. There would be more than one. So assuming that, again, from that PSTN, that could be a gate, your gateways could be hitting from that PSTN, and then those gateways are splitting off to our doc transports. Not seeing very many environments where we would lose all send and receive options in an environment where it was set up correctly. So if we had multiple gateways out here on your network, at least two, let's say, we've got two different options to send and receive faxes to your telephony environment. If your entire IP network failed, if that's what we're asking, RightFax and our doc transports do have the ability to store faxes that are going to be sent. Of course, we can't receive what we can't get. We're queuing. But we can store things for outbound when your network comes back up to a degree. So there will be some options there. I think, again, we might need to talk a little bit more specifically about what your environment looks like and how we could best architect this.
Okay, great. The next question is version AVST 7.91 compatible with RightFax 10.5?
So we're going to have to take all those offline and see, because compatible and supported are the two categories we have to have separate discussions around. So would those two work together? Yes, most likely. But if we haven't actually tested them because of the differences in age in the software level, then there might be an issue on not whether we feel comfortable supporting it.
Okay, and then the last question, probably want to take offline as well, but they're wondering how to determine the number of fax over IP ports for an enterprise. And again, that would depend on a lot of variables.
Yeah, the one piece I would give you on that, because that question does come up regularly. It's a good question, very valid. You might look at it as how you built out your voice over IP network, and how did you build out how many ports for voice. It's going to be similar for fax calls. So if we understand how many fax calls and how many ports are required, how many voice calls and how many ports are required, IP ports, it's going to be similar for fax. That's a bit of a generalization, but it is kind of a rule of thumb as well that we've used in the past.
Great. Okay, and that looks like those are all the questions we had. Again, we want to thank everyone for your participation and all your questions and for attending the webinar. And Neil and Greg, would you like to add anything? First Neil and then Greg.
Yeah, I'd just like to extend my thanks as well. I know it's difficult to come to these. We work really hard on figuring out the correct agenda. What can we give you that you'll find useful? And looking at the number of attendees on this one, I think this is definitely one that garnered interest, and that's very good. Greg.
I appreciate everyone's attendance, and if there's additional questions, obviously get back to any of us. you can get back to us through your AVST account representatives, and we've got resources available on both ends to answer any and all questions, so feel free to reach out with additional questions that needed. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.